you so much for joining us here today on the F Word, Female Creatives in Conversation. My name is Kimberly Ang, and I'm a Junior Art Director at Geometry Singapore. I'll shortly be speaking with Vivien Yap, a fellow female creative working in the music industry, on what it's like, as a female creative, navigating the work environment and trying to create iconic work. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I joined Geometry in 2018, and in my 2 short years here, I have worked on projects for global brands like GlaxoSmithKline, GSK, Coca-Cola, Listerine, Treasury Wine Estate, Nestle, and Unilever, among others. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, why on earth would they choose to feature someone as junior as her, a relative nobody, to speak about being a female creative? Yes, 5 to 11% of creative directors are now women, but was there no one else we could get, with more experience to share her story? And I hear you completely, but let me share with you a little tidbit about myself. Earlier this year, I was lucky enough to be chosen to represent Geometry in the Can Diversity Collective, which is an initiative that aims to create opportunities for previously absent people of color at the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity. It's not about tokenism or affirmative action. We need to normalize equality, which means leveling the playing field by providing these opportunities until we can honestly say that the people we choose to hire and work with and feature in our ads are judged based on their values, their body of work, their work ethic, instead of how they look, what they believe in, who they love, or where they come from. Let me share with you now the video that won me a spot in the Diversity Collective. Please enjoy.
Dim Gam Chua Ho Ang. On the last day of Chinese New Year, single women are expected to find love by throwing an orange into a river with their name and phone number written on it, in the hope a suitor will retrieve it and love will ensue.
But maybe it's time to rewrite this tradition. My happiness does not depend on the flow of a river. My future does not lie in the hands of a man. Today, I own my fate. I want to join the Can Diversity Collective for who I really am, for the work that I've created and the work that I'll continue to create as a geometry creative. It's not about luck. I want to be part of a group of people pursuing their own ideas of happiness, to immerse myself and to learn from the best. In Chinese culture, oranges also symbolize abundance and prosperity. I want to use these values to forge my own path. So you've seen the video, and I don't have decades of experience under my belt or a shelf of shiny metal trophies, but I'm really passionate about creativity, and I think I provide a different perspective as someone who's just starting out in her career of what it's like to be a woman in this business. So now, enough about me. Let me talk about my guest today, Vivien Yap. Vivien is an amazing creative in her own right, and the definition of a multi-hyphenate. She's a singer, songwriter, self-published author and poet who has something small like, over 500,000 streams so far on Spotify with over 25,000 monthly listeners. She's been featured on Apple Music, Bandwagon Asia, and countless Spotify curated playlists. If in the near future, you are able to fly on Singapore Airlines, whenever that is, you can actually stream her music as part of their feature on local talent. Her book, Can You Hear Me Now, was published in 2018, and she's a vocal advocate on mental health, having spoken at TEDx Youth in Singapore on her journey with mental health, depression, and image. So let's welcome Vivien Yap. Hi Vivien, how are you? Are you keeping well?
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm trying to keep sane, as we all are. But yeah, I'm okay.
I think it's tough, right? When you're at home and you're working and at home, that sort of dichotomy of like, you're never really, there's no clear boundaries between the way that you work and you rest. Is that some thing that you find yourself feeling nowadays, stuck at home?
I think it was okay when we started, because when the lockdown in Singapore started, I was very conscious about the fact that I will be stuck at home for about the next few months. So in the beginning, it was okay because I was very strict with myself, right? I was like, okay, wake up, you do not do work in your room, you go to another place to do work, and then once you're done with work, you do not exercise in your room, you go to another place to exercise. And yeah, so it's been okay until I think recently, when it's really starting to set in, like they keep throwing on the term like a new normal, and I'm just starting to kind of like wonder what that entails. So this might stretch on indefinitely, you know, that kind of thing. So recently it's been a bit wobbly, but building up to this, I've been pretty okay.
Yeah, I think the time and space allocation for yourself is so important, especially I think for me, you occupy such an interesting position as both a independent artist and a creative marketer, because you are a record label manager. You know, you're the operations manager of The Fruits, and your job is to market other artists. So how do you find yourself? Do you find yourself putting on different hats when it comes to this sort of creativity? What
Right.
happens? Yeah.
I guess we just start off by describing what I do in the label. So there are only, because the indie scene in Singapore is so small, and not just the indie scene, the entire music industry, local music industry is like teeny tiny. Um, our record label is run by two people, so I make up, or three, I guess. I make up 1/3 of it, and so a lot of I wear many hats, I guess, because of this. So I run day-to-day operations, like making sure artists submit all their assets on time. This is very agency-like, and I think this is where my agency experience comes into play. Like, I have to chase artists to submit their music on time. I have to set up forms to collect data. I have to talk to our reps to I guess, coordinate certain marketing campaigns for our artists. So like I have to wear the operational hat and the marketing hat, and also kind of like personal secretary hat, as it comes with most artists actually. But I think recently, especially when I have my own release, my own music coming out, that line is completely blurred, because then I'm doing everything for myself. I am accountable for my own music, which I guess this is not the right word to use, but I'm just gonna use it. I guess it is unfair, because um, artists in our label, and I'm also under our label, they have people to take care of them, right? And I am the person taking care of them. So what happens when it's my turn, right? No one really takes care of me. And so it has put into perspective a lot of things for me, like how I want to use these skills that I picked up in the music industry to kind of do things differently as an artist, how not to be, for lack of a better word, too jealous of butthurt over like my other fellow artists' success, and what that means to me, and how can I build towards building up an image as an artist that I really want to be. So yeah, I think it's particularly tough when I have music coming out and I have to juggle between, like you said, being this person and being the artist Vivien. Yeah, but other than that, I'm pretty on the ball most of the time.
I love what you're saying here about, like, you know, discipline, because I feel as a creative in the ad industry, you're always pushed to put out your own personal projects as a way to market yourself. And sometimes time just gets away from you. You know, you have to be determined and disciplined. You have to do the work in order to get results. And sometimes it's easy to push things by the wayside. So I totally hear you, you know, in terms of what it takes to actually get your brand out there, and especially if you have to push yourself every single time, because it's so easy to do nothing at all, right? And to be jealous of other people when, you know, you don't see the work that they put in, the hours, the months, right? And maybe you could share with us a little bit about, because the music industry is so different, what does it take to actually make iconic work? You know, what is iconic work in the music industry?
That's a very good question. It's something that our label is constantly thinking about. When I mean our label, I just mean me and my label founder. It's like work meetings are just chats on Telegram and WhatsApp. But so for a label to kind of sustain its presence, not only just in Singapore, but in general in the world and the universe, you need to make some kind of profit, and you need to make sure that the products that you put out, which in this case is music and artist marketing, I guess, you need to make sure that the products you put out get revenue. So You need to constantly be pushing your artists to kind of make to make a song that's better than their previous release. If I can just put it very bluntly, I would never say this to an artist, by the way, because like to an artist, every release is special in your heart. But as speaking from a person wearing the label hat, we do look at a lot of data, we do look at a lot of numbers. So when you talk about what is iconic, right? What does it mean to be iconic in the local music scene? Does it mean songs that get 500,000 streams in a week? Or does it mean songs that kind of song that you listen to 10 years after it's released and it's still like it's like, what's that song? Christina Perri's wedding song, that one that has 1 billion views and keeps going because people keep playing it for their weddings, people keep playing it when they have their heart broken. So it really depends on what you define and what we define as iconic. Right now, from a record label perspective, I can tell you that iconic means Doja Cat Say So, right? Like getting onto TikTok and becoming a viral hit is iconic. But also we need to be aware that millions of campaign money is being pumped into creating iconic material, which obviously as a small indie label we don't have. So at the base level, which is what we're doing now, is to kind of push artists to really put out content that is the best version of themselves and what they want to represent. So we do have an emergence of the lo-fi genre. I'm sure you know, lo-fi genre, Jeremy Zucker, kind of bedroom producer, B. We do have the emergence of that kind of artist coming up in Singapore, but we always try to tell them like, hey, the genre you're embarking on is super hot. It's super like popular, but you need to make sure that the product that you put out is of good quality. So, you know, get it mixed properly. Don't do everything by yourself. If we tell you that there's something wrong with your track, take our advice, because we want your track to do well. We don't want to dilute your artistry. We want to make it better. And I think from an indie label perspective, that's what we want by iconic. So instead of gunning for big numbers, we want to build a loyal fan base for an artist, and that just means connecting to people at the truest form, which is good music. And that's the main difference, I feel, working for an indie label versus compared to working for major record companies who pump in like thousands and thousands of dollars into their own artists and stuff like that.
So do you find, I mean, I think we're going away from the female aspect, but in terms of trends you're looking at as an indie record label, you're saying that you want your artists to be authentic, but I mean, I'm sure you're thinking of like, okay, can this be an anthem, you know, or like you're saying, does it trend on TikTok, and how much of that actually affects the kind of work that you're asking your artists to put out or edit it based on?
Right. So the answer for me is very different from what I guess someone working the major record label would say, because for us, like I mentioned, we are so small and we have such a limited budget. We can't possibly have the resources to build an artist. We can't really be like, oh, this is an anthem. Yes, we're going to put tons of money behind it, because we don't have that liquidity at that moment. So what we do is that we kind of carve out different genre buckets for our artists. We have the group of artists that put out music that, you know, is quote unquote relevant, it's radio playable, super streamable. So for these artists that are more of the pop market, we push them to kind of create more music and more content that would be like what you said, catchy, like anthems, do super well on TikTok. We try to push them for TikTok campaigns. I have to help them. Sorry, that sounded very passive aggressive. I have to work with them to come up with TikTok campaigns and you know, push for organic success on TikTok, which is so difficult, by the way. And then on the other hand, we have these guys who are so like R&B, which is also kind of trendy. So maybe that's not the best example, but we do have people who are doing the whole garage rock. You know, when you go to their gigs, they kind of spill beer all over you, stuff that is not that radio friendly. And for those people, we again focus on the music and the heart of it, and building a loyal fan base, because Singapore is so small, right? Like, but when you look at the bigger picture, which is what I always try to tell myself and my closer musician friends that it doesn't matter if your music doesn't do well in Singapore. It doesn't matter if like the radio stations don't want to pick it up, because there is bound to be a pair of ears like across the globe that will listen to your music. And so a lot of the one thing that I've realized that a lot of artists kind of corner themselves into is becoming very short-sighted with like immediate gratification, you know. So which is something that I've had to learn, and I've had to kind of tell my artists and some of my friends. And this is where being a girl comes in very handy, because I feel that as a girl I can just sort of very easily move into the whole like, let's talk about our feelings, and then like these these things just kind of come out, because it's much easier to connect to an artist when you talk to them about their craft and art rather than numbers. You want to get onto 30 playlists, you got to do this and so sorry, am I gender stereotyping? I don't know, but personally for me, I really do tap into the more like feminine side of myself when I'm trying to tell them things.
I think what you're saying is really funny, because in the advertising world, there's always the stereotype that all account servicing people are women because they are better at giving and receiving feedback. So
Yeah.
definitely, that's very interesting to hear. Maybe you could speak a little bit about, you know, being a woman as both the producer side, you know, record label side, as well as the creative side, because I'm sure that, you know, women in your industry are particularly looked at, if you're an artist, on how you look, how you dress, the kind of attention you get from let's say male audiences. That must be a huge thing. And is that something that's affected you right in the past or right now, or how do you deal with it also?
I've never really, ever since I started putting music out publicly, so being a quote unquote public figure, I don't like that phrase, but just putting out music as an artist, I have not received any kind of negative backlash as to what I wear on stage, you know. The only thing that has happened to me, two things, I think. One thing was like another female, so this is not about gender anymore, this is completely personal. another female individual in the industry kind of talked down to me, in a sense that she was like, oh, change your branding, like, because I'm butt licks on Instagram and it's like my thing. So she's like, change it, like, you know, yeah, B-U-T-T-L-I-C-K-S. She's like, yes, change it, you know, you don't have to be afraid of change, as if me being butt licks me being weird is kind of like stopping me from greater success. So that was the only incident where someone told me to my face, where I had to like change my personality to be more accessible to the public. And then the second one was recently, like, just someone commented on my Instagram saying, oh yeah, you are so great, but you would be perfect if like you change your looks or something like that. I don't know. I'm sure you know. It was on my Insta story, and like a mob went after him. Like, it was so scary. I was like, guys, don't reply him. But so as a female artist, to receive this kind of comments when you are impressionable and when you're surrounded by other female artists who are like glamorous, right?
Authenticity is such a great personal brand, you know, like there are people like, you know, Hobo Johnson, who is unapologetically himself as a rapper in a band, but he's not handsome by any conventional means, but his work is so good because it is real, and there is such an audience for that emotional vocabulary that he puts out. He talks about situations of, like, you know, unrequited love, which I think you do too in some of your pieces, which has
most of my pieces we're talking about.
It's a lot of emotional resonance, you know, with audiences. Like you were saying earlier, it's about connecting and getting a loyal fan base, because people want to know you as an artist, and they want like a look into your life and how perhaps it matches theirs. And, you know, you gotta celebrate that realness. Sometimes it's not all about everyone looks like Katy Perry and you talk about like parties and, you know.
And like, let's not just look at Katy Perry, like even on individual like clique or society kind of microcosm, social media is so toxic. Like, you don't have to be a super influencer you don't have to be a super influencer to feel that your friend, you might be jealous of what your friends have. And I I kind of hate that. Like I kind of hate being exposed to that. Therefore, as an artist and with someone that has a slightly elevated platform of expressing myself, I try not to impose that kind of um, this is aura onto members of the public, especially since this is where like my label head comes into play, especially since I have access to tools to find out the numbers behind people who actually listen to my music. I know my fan base is predominantly young females, and like a lot of my songs come from struggles faced when I was a young, sad female. And I just don't want to be that kind of person to impose that kind of stress, societal stress on fellow young girls. And it's really all about being the person that I wanted to be, or wanted to have existed when I was, in my younger years.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is it's really about emulating and thinking about the other generation, who your audience is, and how they approach your work, and what are they taking from it. If you put out certain kind of pieces that perhaps it's aspirational to you, but what's it saying about yourself as a brand, and how are other young people consuming it?
And that's very relevant considering that right now, because of COVID-19, we are all stuck at homes and we are so much more vulnerable to things that we see online, right? And this is where I feel sometimes I get very angry looking at social media, because I see all these people who have so much influence, so many people follow them, especially young people, they follow them, and they just sort of live life irresponsibly. They spread wrong messages. Like I personally, going out during COVID, like why would you as a person with a large fan base should have the kind of thought that you do have influence. And therefore I feel that being a role model comes hand in hand with doing art. If you have any kind of platform to influence, you need to kind of have that social responsibility as well, especially now when everyone is just on their phones like 150% of the time.
Yeah, my screen report is always crazy. The amount of
Yeah,
time you spend on screen.
it's
If
ridiculous.
For what you were saying about role modeling, is there anyone you currently look up to? Because I know for myself at least, when I think about strong female role models in the advertising world, I think of like women like Jessica Walsh. She partnered with Stephen Sackmeister at 25 to set up Sackmeister and Walsh, and right now she's got her own. She has her own design label, advertising agency. She set up, Ladies Wine and Design, which is a initiative that helps create a community of women designers from across the world. And when I think about what she's doing, I've read her story, and she suffered because she was so successful that people had inroads into making jokes about how she probably slept with Stephen Sackmeister in order to get her partnership role, and that's not cool. But in terms of, I think, her story, that's really inspiring to me. So I want to know, is there someone you look up to in your life in that way?
I think, okay, just slightly segue away before I can lose myself. The thing about like getting to a place of power and then having people sort of like, oh my God, you slept with him. I actually felt that when I was working, when I first got hired by my label. People were like, are you guys dating? Like, is that why you're working with him? Like, no, like, I got handpicked because I am accountable as both a person as an artist, and my current colleague slash founder slash boss saw that in me. Like, there is nothing going on. Like, why would that be the first thing you jump right into? Right. So back to your question about role models, I think right now I kind of have this thing where I keep telling people like I never want to meet a celebrity. Like I'm just not impressed anymore. Because like in Singapore we're so small, and we when I was on the road to becoming to actually just being an artist myself, I put a lot of artists on pedestals, and it's like I shot myself in the foot, because now at this stage I know a lot of these artists. I actually have to work for them. I've seen them, and I'm just like, you're not cool, you're a mess. And so I have this thing where I'm like, would I want to meet anyone else and kind of be like fall, like just sort of see them fall from the pedestal. And as a result, many of my like idols have fallen off. But I think the one person that I look to in terms of just creativity and self-expression, I think would be Hayley Williams from Paramore. She just put out her like debut album, because a 3-part album. It's super personal and it's super strange. But I think the thing that really kind of shook me was the whole marketing campaign behind it. She basically opened up about Paramore and all the sexism she had to face, growing up in this super testosterone filled genre of music, and part of that, which I think resonates very deeply with what you said about your role model, is that she was constantly being pushed around sexually. Like, we just talk about her and like her private parts in the open, and as an only female, she had to put up with a lot of things from a very young age, which I obviously don't relate to because I haven't been in the scene for a very long time. But I just feel that for an artist to come out of that being so self-aware and like putting out a volume of work that is so nuanced and mature, I think that is something that I've always wanted to strive towards. Just not being held back by your genre anymore, not being held back by your band. Not that I have a band, but just really just doing what you want, and being able to successfully tell your story without anything being lost in translation. Like, that is the kind of creative technicality that I wish to reach. Yeah, but if you're talking about like hard skills or like attitude, no, there's no one. It's very hard to talk about someone I respect in terms of attitude wise in the arts industry, because artists have all that stereotype of being messy, which I can attest to is most of the time true.
Yeah, you're your own role model, right? When it comes to the actual
I'm not a role model, but yes, I try to be the best version of myself so that I don't let myself down because I'm doing everything by myself.
What I think when you're saying, Hayley Williams put out an album that's in three parts and had a really personal take on her journey in Paramore.
Yeah.
I think some of it is reputation management, and I think as a female, sometimes you have to deal with all this sort of sexism that's so rife in our industry. In terms of yourself, do you find that in particular ways you deal with certain artists, like you're more conscious of how you come across, or like you want things to be very transparent?
Right.
I think sometimes people think about like chaperones, but that's a terrible word that shouldn't belong in our current climate. But having accountability and transparency to ensure that your reputation remains, and you're not you don't give people an opportunity to question it.
Right. I mean, I have been, how do I say this without sounding weird, but I have been lucky not to have any unwanted people come on to me, simply because I'm not the typical kind of attractive Singaporean girl that most men want. But as a result of this, I have heard from my other friends who like I mentioned just now, they are singers and they are musicians, but they are also beautiful people, right? That is part of their branding. Sorry, they are beautiful people, and they have received opportunities because of the way they look, and they're very aware of it. Which in the past I've like, you only get where you are because of how you look. That's nothing. That's gross. But right now, thinking about it, I'm like, girl, you have it. Just use it. Like, I won't say who this artist is, but I know a girl. She mentioned something like, oh yeah, I could totally tell he was trying to hit on me, but I refrained from telling him that I had a boyfriend until after the interview, when he offered to ask me on a date. So I was like, okay, well, I don't know how to feel about that, but I guess cool, because you got an entire feature article about yourself by withholding certain information.
Oh it's man, that's like bad use of abuse of
yeah,
power.
it is an abuse of power, but unfortunately it happens so often to some females that they just sort of go like, I'm in it for myself, I don't care. So there are instances of girls doing that, and like I try to just say that they're very street smart. They're super street smart, and they know how to I guess manipulate would be the word, right? Like, manipulate circumstances for their own benefit. I try not to do that because that would be complicated and tiring to keep up. And thankfully, like I mentioned, I don't get any of these aggressive opportunities presented to me. So I'm very much in my own bubble, and also because I'm quite fierce, like I'm just not afraid to tell people to be angry at people. That's one thing that I don't know if you feel in the advertising agency, but sometimes anger is a thing that I am told that I have to keep in me because it's not good to be angry at people because what you need is network. But I'm not. I cannot, like, because of my mental health and like everything. I think if I had to suppress any anger, I would literally go insane. So I wear my anger on my sleeve, and I try to tell myself that I'm accountable. I'm an accountable person because of my work, not because of how I present myself. That is secondary to the good work that I do. But as someone new, someone young in an industry that has many elders and people that built the industry. But
I
I
think
always, yeah, you know what I
hierarchy
mean,
is
right?
such a big hierarchy is, it's both good and bad because you're looking at people with huge, decades of experience, and they've lived through what you're currently doing now, which
Yes.
sometimes to the young person's here it's like, no, you don't understand me, but
Yes.
that's not true. People, we've all been there before, and there's so much we can learn if we can stay open about, both in terms of being honest with ourselves and with each other. So let me ask you one last question to end off. If you could perhaps describe your experience so far as a creative woman, female creative in your industry, in just one word, maybe you could share with us what that word would be.
One word: humbling, for sure. It has been very humbling. Like, I'm proud of who I am, right? But to get to this state, of being proud of what I've achieved and what I'm doing now, I had to eat a whole ton of humble pie, and I had to really like suffer the brunt of being scapegoated, and even like bearing witness to crimes that women commit against women. I'm sure you know that, like when you stand at a club and you're like, oh my god, that kind of
Yeah,
thing. So it's a huge plate of humble pie, I think.
I think sometimes our own gender is our worst enemy, like, and you can't kind of get away from it because I think at least in the advertising world, it's like there's so few opportunities for women, especially as you progress higher up in the career ladder, and you tend to be even more competitive. You want to be not the token female, but the female who made it to that board.
Yes.
You want to highlight yourself, and it's a lot about being empowered to know that you can do it, but at the same time there's so much positivity that we should spread, and we should take other women up with us. Don't try and bring other women down. Humility, like what you're saying, is really understanding that you're in a position of privilege, and sometimes you have to eat crow and get on with it, but you have to at the same time understand that you're not alone, and your actions always kind of have repercussions on other women, because
yes.
it's all about relationship building, and like you're saying, networking is so important, but it's the general consensus about our gender. We have to all move forward together. You can't be that one person holding us back, and you're the only person who whenever we look for a bad example, that's you, and you bring everyone down.
Lord, yeah. You completely agree, without a doubt.
So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, Vivien. I think what you've said in this little chat is so interesting, and has really given us all an eye-opening view of what it takes to be creative, both as Vivien Yap, the record label producer, and Vivien Yap, the independent artist. So maybe before we end off, you could let us know where we can find you. I think your newest EP just came out, right? The Spot.
I dropped my debut EP last year, but my newest single just came out. It's on Spotify and all good streaming platforms. It's called The Spot. And if you want to follow me on social media and see me in my pajamas and my mental breakdowns, it's Buttlicks. I'm not changing it. That is all.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Okay,
Kim.
I'd like to maybe before we end off here, this whole presentation, I just wanted to extend this talk to other women at other levels in our business, because obviously Vivien and I represent like the younger generation, and we want to open up this conversation because it's called the F word, you know, females in conversation. So we asked this same question about, could you describe what it's like as a female in your industry in one word to other women in the ad world? So please enjoy the video that we've collated of everyone's responses.
I think being a female in the creative industry means that you have to be assertive,
pioneering,
Old, grateful,
unworthy,
an expedition,
juggling act,
fierce,
change.
essential.
Thank you.